White Injun asks, why did God create the mayfly, thousands of species of which, if their lifetime only lasts a day? Why thousands of species of roaches? Why insects whose lifetimes revolve around burrowing out of other insects' bodies? While some species of turtles, whales, sea urchins, and even parrots live longer than humans. There's a simple answer to this question. Because God desired to create such creatures and can use such, depending on their days of lasting, for His own glory and purpose. So God did whatever He wanted in terms of why creating them, in terms of how long their lifespan is. I mean, there are purposes that the roaches and such, as well as the mayflies, as well as the whales and the turtles and the sea urchins and all these others, can serve a purpose in this world.
What purpose would that be?
Well, that's the thing. We may not always know or understand the purpose in which they can be utilized in terms of for some aspects. For example, the whales and the turtles, we can admire their beautiness and the design that is implicated in them. So that's why you see a lot of people that usually love to go out and see whales and the sightseeing of turtles and such, because they love to see the design and such. So it could serve that purpose for the humans that God decided to utilize in that. So ultimately, God, for why He created these creatures, is for His glory and His purpose, of which sometimes we might not be able to understand, but He is the creator and He does as He wills and what He wants with the creation that He utilizes. So I hope that I was able to answer your question, White Injun.
Anyway, an extension to my question is why let them live like I know admiring their beauty and such, but why the unnecessary long lifespans more than humans?
Well, what makes you think it's unnecessary?
If we're the center of God's creation on earth.
Well, in terms of the salvation issue, but I mean, God utilizes all creation for His purpose and glory that gets the attention.
And that many animals do have a purpose, but
right.
I'm curious about the mayfly in general, and
right,
why all those thousands of species. Wouldn't just one species be good enough?
Probably. I mean, why create anything? Why does He need to create anything at all?
And there's only one species of human.
Right. But why create any species whatsoever, though? I mean, if He wanted to, He could have just simply created the earth and just leave it as it is to be observed by Him. And even then, why create that? I mean...
Okay, he said that there was less than, like, oh my gosh, I can't speak today. There was someone in here that said that there was only one species of humans.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you may want to rethink that one.
I know we're a part of a species of ape, but I'm said one species of us, humans, behaviorally modern humans.
Right, but here's the thing, though, concerning your issue. I mean, do you think that there's anything wrong with allowing these creatures to exist, to experience life?
Yeah, but I don't see the point in creating a fly to live less than 24 hours.
Why is that?
I don't know.
I don't want any of those.
What's the point of their existence?
Near my doggy? Hell no.
What's the point? What's the point of their existence?
Well, basically, to have a lot of offspring.
Well, hold on. So you're asking what their purpose of existence is? So what would be a sufficient answer to you? Like, what would be a standard to give you the answer? Because I said that, it's because you sound like you're implying that, we have to have a reason for these things to exist when, of course, God made them and He can do however He wishes. So
isn't there a reason for everything?
Yes, and that's why that everything occurs for a reason. And so when even mayflies, turtles, whales, all these creatures exist, they all serve a purpose and a function of even the most tiniest speck of detail in the universe of God's creation. And so sometimes we don't know all of which it can be utilized for the purpose of, but we do know that the creation itself serves one purpose, to be self-sufficient evidence for God, for us to see God or to know God. And so you have that as one purpose. Second concept could be an admiration of beauty and such for some of them, as I had mentioned earlier. There could be all kinds of things that can be used. Those are just two of the purposes that could be utilized. But there is a lot more. And, Deuteronomy says that there's the things that are the secret things that belong to God, and they remain with him. That which we may know concerning the purpose and such is revealed in his word. Does that help out any? Does that help out any?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay. Thank you for that. I do want to go back to one conversation we had where you mentioned the Zoroastrians, that Judaism borrowed from Zoroastrianism.
No, I said
in a way they kind of did, actually.
Said Second Temple Judaism and Zoroastrianism shared ideas.
Okay, so Second Temple Judaism and Zoroastrianism shared ideas in what way?
They were actually exiled in the same area that Zoroastrianism was around.
Right, but I'm asking because it was him that was making the accusation earlier about that. So I just wanted to clarify what you mean by that history.
No, me or him?
History net.
Okay, shared, I'm really good with history.
Yeah, like they about the heaven and hell, the eternal conflict between God and Satan, which was a generic term for adversary.
Okay.
And the idea of the Messiah.
Mm-hmm. And so the whole Zoroastrianism ideas and such takes around the time of the guy Zoroaster, right?
Zarathustra was his real name, but yeah.
Right. And that's where we're getting most of the whole stories and instances taking place, right?
Do what?
That's where we would get the beliefs and such taking place, right? Is during his lifetime.
Yeah.
And so it is.
Or after his lifetime, because
right.
The linguistics of the scriptures go back to around that time.
Right. So during his time, he existed around 600 BC. And so when it comes to that, you have Judaism being well before that, at least even before 1000 BC.
Well, actually, Judaism was formed during the Babylonian exile, but before that, it was just the ancient Israelite religion. We don't know the name.
Which was Judaism.
It was a lot more tribal than it was later.
There's an evolving that happens, just like there was an evolving of Judaism from the time of Jesus to the Judaism that exists today, but it was still Judaism, even if it was a tribal version. So the fact
is, they worshipped gods of the land, so that they lived on off and on.
Mm-hmm.
Then after the exile, they got rid of all of their statues and rebuilt the temple.
So history net, you say this, but as I pointed out, I mean, you have people like you have Noah, and you have all these people that are before.
No, he had no connection with the Israelites. He was just a distant figure that God spared from the flood of Samaria.
So he didn't practice and worship.
It all began with Abraham.
Okay, but yet why is Noah involved and said that they were practicing the same religion?
because God spared him from the Sumerian flood.
Okay, and so he was spared from the Sumerian flood. He worshipped the God of Abraham.
Yeah,
Isaac,
Abraham
and
was is one of his descendants.
Right, meaning they worship the same God, practice the same religion. So the
Well, not
God
the
of
same-
Judaism,
Well, not the same religion, but they believed
absolutely,
in the one.
that it was. Because God wouldn't just change up simply the issue of.
You do know you can worship God without adhering to a religion, right?
Well, I would have arguments with that. I would think that would kind of be hypocritical against the definition of religion. And I think that if you do worship a God without religion, it's a false God.
Okay, would you say that
you could be a spiritual person?
Right.
Would you say that Judaism goes back to Adam and Eve?
Yeah, I believe it goes back to Adam and Eve.
No, it does not. They lived around 50 to 70,000 years ago, so that would be impossible for a religion like that.
Why?
How do you know that?
It's not religion; it's just belief in belief in the one God. They didn't have any tenets back then.
Well, religion is defined as the.
It began with the covenant of Abraham and the law of Moses.
Religion is defined as a belief in God as well.
Not really. A religion
It is actually. I have the dictionary definition if you want it.
Religion is a set of beliefs, arbitrary or otherwise, binding humans into a shared cooperative community and/or identity.
Right.
Sorry for interjecting, but I thought wasn't part of the reason why Cain and Abel had the conflict they did was due to their offerings that they made up to God in Genesis.
Yeah, then that was. And that was during the time of Adam and Eve. So they were dealing with offerings. Anubis were getting
using the lifestyle they were used to in order to illustrate the story.
Oh, hold on. Hey, Anubis, could you mute your mic for a bit? We're picking up some sounds that I can't hear them. All right, thanks, man.
You probably didn't know he was unmuted. Yeah.
I heard airplane.
I don't know, man. Don't worry about it. So
anyway, the biblical author was using imagery from their time in order to illustrate life back then, because they didn't know what upper Paleolithic caveman life was like.
Okay, but the point is, as Fanboy pointed out, during the time of Adam and Eve, when they had Cain and Abel, they were doing offerings.
That's what the biblical author stated, but that's not what they were doing.
So it says they did this, but in reality, they didn't.
We have no evidence that anybody performed sacrifices back then.
That's not a way to validate your position either, though. Lack of evidence doesn't prove that you're right.
Exactly.
It's not what cavemen did.
Well, how do you know that?
Exactly. How do you know?
They hunted. They gathered.
Wait. If there's no evidence of this stuff that you're talking about, well, then where are you getting the idea that they didn't do this or that back then?
Exactly. It sounds kind of like secret information.
It's very esoteric.
There's no paleontological evidence.
Okay, so because there's no paleontological evidence, then that means it didn't happen. That means before then, before there was evidences of, say, like certain fossils that exist that act as the intermediary fossils between one species to another in the evolutionary period. Before those, they didn't exist. That was okay to just assume that certain things just didn't happen or didn't exist.
What?
If there was a creature, a fossil of some new species of creature that was discovered, but before then it wasn't discovered, is it safe to say, that thing doesn't exist?
No.
Right. So likewise, we can't just simply say that this didn't happen. And plus, you're basically testing the word of God with human standards to say, well, we don't have anything here, so the Bible's wrong on this part.
Oh, the Bible.
That's right. Right.
No, Michael Heiser goes over this. They were using imagery of their own time in order to illustrate the theology.
Well,
Like,
that's the thing. I have Heiser's book on that, and that's not what he's displaying concerning that. He's talking about the cosmology, the ancient science and such. So talking about the flat Earth passages, talking about the certain scientific or mishaps and such with like the kidneys being the heart and center of emotions and such. That thing would be the theological messaging aspect that you're getting from Heiser, but no, that's not the same thing as they were doing offerings and making offerings at that point. I've read Heiser's book. I've talked to Heiser. I know most certainly that he would be disagreeing with you on this.
okay.
I remember one of the flat earthers tried to assert that Michael Heiser was supporting the flat Earth. And, they sent me the quote.
Yeah,
He wasn't supporting it at all.
All I had to do was keep reading because it clearly showed that Heiser did believe that the Israelites believed that the world was flat, but he did not go on to say that that he actually believes that the Bible teaches that, though.
right.
You know,
He made a distinction between it being a didactic teaching.
Rabbis,
and
I just wanted to throw that in.
He made a difference between it being a didactic teaching versus it being a passing statement that was just describing from their perspective and such.
Right.
He was still able to utilize it. Yeah. So
even rabbis would tell you that's what the Israelites believed.
right.
Talking about the flat Earth.
No, yeah, it being a flat disc underneath a dome supported by pillars, surrounded by water.
You know what else they would tell you?
What?
That Adam and Eve were practicing Judaism.
Seriously?
No,
Really?
it's not Judaism the way we know it.
Right, and like the Judaism we know it today was different during the time of Jesus. Like we have, they were following different Trinity beliefs, or at least different kinds of Trinity beliefs. You had some that were Trinitarians, some that were Binitarians, some that believed 10 in 1, and some that believed in 100 in 1, depending on which concept you focused on. It wasn't until the medieval period that it got condemned. Again, there's where we see the evolution of Judaism striking.